I always thought I had it all figured out. Life isn't perfect for anyone, but for me, it was pretty damn close. My name's Matt, and for as long as I can remember, my life revolved around two constants: my best friend, Alex, and my knack for attracting trouble, and by trouble, I mean women who turned heads everywhere they went. Alex and I met when we were just kids. He was the shy one, the kid who always got picked last for sports. I was the loudmouth with a little too much confidence for my own good. Our bond was instant. I liked how Alex never tried to compete with me. He was always content being the quieter one, letting me take the spotlight. I guess the spotlight was something I got used to early on. High school was full of moments where girls I barely knew would giggle as I walked by or slip me notes during class. It was flattering, sure, but it wasn't something I ever thought about deeply. Alex, on the other hand, noticed everything. He would joke about being my wingman, laughing it off when his attempts to talk to someone were overshadowed by my presence. "Why bother?" he'd say with a grin. "They've already got their eyes on you." I never thought it bothered him. But then came Lila. From the moment I saw her, I knew she was different. She had this magnetic energy that drew people in without even trying. I was smitten the second she smiled at me from across the bar. Alex was there that night, of course, nursing a beer and watching as I made my move. I remember introducing her to him, the way his smile faltered for just a second before he plastered it back on. "You're a lucky guy," he said later, and I believed he meant it. When Lila and I got serious, Alex was right there beside us, cheering us on. He helped me pick out the ring, planned my bachelor party, and stood by my side as my best man on the biggest day of my life. If anyone had asked me back then, I'd have said Alex was the truest friend anyone could ever have. I had no idea what he was capable of. The wedding was everything I could have hoped for. Lila looked stunning in her dress, her smile lighting up the room as she walked down the aisle. My parents beamed with pride, and Alex gave a heartfelt speech at the reception, making everyone laugh and tearing up just a little as he talked about how lucky I was to have found Lila. "If anyone deserves happiness, it's Matt," he said, holding up his glass. "He's been like a brother to me, and seeing him with Lila, it's proof that sometimes the good guys really do win." The crowd erupted into cheers, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have Alex in my corner. The first few months of married life were blissful. Lila and I moved into a cozy 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, and everything felt like a fresh start. Alex would stop by occasionally for dinner or to catch the game, but something about him started to feel off. At first, I chalked it up to him being busy with work. He'd just gotten a new job at a tech company, one that kept him traveling a lot. "It's good money," he'd say, shrugging. "But man, it's exhausting." Still, there were little things I couldn't ignore. He stopped texting as much, and when we did talk, he always seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. I figured maybe he was just lonely. He hadn't been in a serious relationship in years, and I knew it bothered him more than he let on. "Hey, man," I said one night after we polished off a couple of beers. "You ever think about settling down? You're a catch, you know. You just have to put yourself out there." He laughed, but it wasn't his usual laugh. "Yeah, maybe someday. Right now, I've got other things to focus on." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't until a few months later that the cracks started to show. I came home early one evening after a long day at work, eager to surprise Lila with takeout from her favorite Thai place. As I walked up to the house, I noticed Alex's car parked in the driveway. It wasn't unusual for him to stop by, but something about it felt off. I brushed it aside and let myself in, calling out as I stepped into the living room. "Hey, Lila." I brought. The rest of the sentence died in my throat. Lila and Alex were sitting on the couch, their heads bent close together as they whispered. When they saw me, they sprang apart, guilt flashing across their faces. "Matt," Lila said, her voice too bright. "You're home early." Alex stood up, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I was just. I needed some advice about something." Lila's better at this emotional stuff than I am. Advice about what? I asked, narrowing my eyes. They exchanged a quick glance before Lila forced a laugh. Nothing serious. Just work stuff. I didn't buy it for a second. From that moment on, I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way Alex's eyes lingered on Lila a little too long when he thought I wasn't looking. The way she seemed to tense up whenever I mentioned his name. The late-night phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. Alex was my best friend. Lila was my wife. They couldn't. But the nagging doubt wouldn't go away. So one night, when Lila said she was going out with her friends, I decided to follow her. I waited a few minutes after Lila left before grabbing my keys and slipping out the door. I kept my headlights off as I tailed her car through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Lila wasn't headed toward downtown, where she usually met her friends. Instead, she turned down a side street and pulled into the parking lot of a small coffee shop. My chest tightened when I saw Alex's car already parked there. I watched from a distance as she got out and walked inside, her steps quick, almost nervous. Alex was waiting at a corner table, his head down as he scrolled through his phone. When Lila approached, he looked up, and for a moment, I saw something in his expression I hadn't noticed before, a mix of guilt and something deeper. I sat there in my car, frozen. Part of me wanted to burst through the door and confront them, demand answers. But another part of me needed to know the truth without giving them a chance to lie. So I waited. They stayed inside for nearly an hour. I watched as they leaned in close, their heads almost touching as they talked. At one point, Lila reached across the table and touched Alex's hand. He didn't pull away. When they finally got up to leave, I ducked down in my seat, my pulse racing. They walked out together, but instead of going to their cars, they stood in the parking lot, talking in hushed tones. Then, to my absolute horror, Alex reached out and pulled Lila into a hug. It wasn't a friendly hug. It was the kind of hug that lingered, the kind that made my stomach churn. That night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next few days were a blur. I tried to act normal, but every time I looked at Lila or Alex, I saw that moment in the parking lot, replaying over and over in my mind. I needed answers, but I didn't know how to get them. Finally, I decided to take a different approach. I waited until Lila was out running errands and Alex was at work, then I went through my phone records. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for, dozens of calls and texts between Lila and Alex, all at odd hours. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the timestamps, each one feeling like a punch to the gut. I wasn't imagining things. Something was going on between them. When Lila came home that evening, I was waiting for her. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the table where my phone sat, the call logs open for her to see. "What's this about?" "You and Alex," I said, my voice breaking. "What the hell is going on?" Her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, but then her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. "It's not what you think," she said. "Then tell me what it is," I shot back. She hesitated, biting her lip. "We've been talking, yes. But it's not. I didn't mean for it to happen." I stared at her, my chest tightening. "Didn't mean for what to happen?" She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I care about you, Matt. I do. But Alex, he's been there for me in ways I didn't expect." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me, everything I thought I knew falling apart. "And you just, what? Decided to throw everything we have away for him?" "I didn't want this," she cried, her voice cracking. "But Alex, he said he's always been in your shadow, Matt. He feels like he's never had a chance to be happy because everyone's always drawn to you. And for once, he wanted something for himself." Lila's words echoed in my mind, louder than I could bear. Alex wanted something for himself? Was that supposed to justify what they'd done? I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and suffocating, but beneath it was something worse, a deep, gnawing sense of betrayal. I can't believe this, I said, pacing the room. I trusted you. I trusted him. And this is what I get? How long has this been going on? Lila shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Matt, it wasn't like that. I swear. We never crossed that line. We just talked. But Alex. I stopped in my tracks, spinning around to face her. Alex what? She hesitated, her hands trembling. He told me things, Matt. Things I didn't know about you. About how hard it's been for him, always living in your shadow. He's jealous of you. He always has been. Her words hit me like a gut punch. Jealous? Alex? I'd known the guy since we were kids. He was my best man, my brother. He was supposed to have my back, not this. I need to talk to him, I muttered, grabbing my jacket. Matt, please don't, Lila began, but I was already out the door. I drove to Alex's place, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. My mind raced with memories of all the times I'd defended him, supported him, trusted him. Was it all just an act? When I got to his apartment, I banged on the door so hard the wood rattled. It took a minute, but Alex finally opened it, his expression shifting from surprise to apprehension when he saw me. Matt, he said cautiously. What's going on? I pushed past him into the apartment, my anger barely contained. Cut the crap, Alex. I know. He froze, his eyes narrowing. Know what? You and Lila, I spat. Don't even try to deny it. She told me everything. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, to my disbelief, he let out a bitter laugh. Of course she did, he said, shaking his head. She always does what's best for you, doesn't she? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. It means you've always had it all, Matt. The looks, the charm, the girls. You walk into a room, and everyone notices you. Me? I'm just the guy standing in the corner, invisible unless I'm next to you. That's bullshit, Alex, and you know it, I shot back. You're my best friend. I've always had your back. And this is how you repay me? By going after my wife? He flinched, but his jaw tightened. You don't get it. You never have. Do you have any idea what it's like to live in your shadow? To watch every girl I've ever been interested in choose you instead? I stared at him, my anger momentarily giving way to disbelief. This isn't about me, Alex. It's about what you did. You could have talked to me. You could have said something. But instead, you went behind my back. And what would you have done? He shot back. Stop being yourself? Made yourself less so I could finally have a chance? No, Matt. This was the only way. His words were like poison, twisting in my gut. I felt a wave of disgust, not just with him, but with myself. Had I really been blind to this all these years? I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, my voice low. Alex looked away, his expression hardening. Maybe you never did. I stood there, staring at Alex, the weight of his words pressing down on me. He wasn't just bitter, he was consumed by it, letting it fester until it turned into this. Betrayal. Jealousy. Why, Alex? I asked, my voice quieter now, though no less angry. Why couldn't you just talk to me? All these years, I thought we were brothers. I would have done anything for you. He let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head. That's just it, Matt. You would have done anything for me, except step out of the spotlight. You don't even realize it, do you? You don't try to steal attention, it just happens. And people like me, we're just left picking up the scraps. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. You think this is about me stealing attention? That's your excuse for stabbing me in the back? I didn't plan for this to happen, Alex said, his voice rising. But for once, someone actually saw me. Lila, she listened to me in a way you never did. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine. You think she chose you? Is that what you're telling yourself? His silence spoke volumes. You're delusional, I said, shaking my head. Lila and I have problems like any married couple, but she didn't choose you, Alex. She was vulnerable, and you exploited that. That's not how it was, he snapped, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. I took a step closer, my voice dropping. You've been jealous of me your whole life, and instead of working through it, you let it eat you alive. Do you really think betraying me will fix that? Will it make you happy? Alex didn't answer. He just stood there, his jaw clenched, his fists at his sides. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. You've lost me, Alex. And if you think Lila's going to stick around after this, you're deluding yourself. She'll see you for who you really are, just like I do now. When I got home, Lila was waiting for me, her face pale and drawn. What did he say? She asked, her voice trembling. I dropped my keys on the table and stared at her for a long moment. He's broken, Lila. But that doesn't excuse what you both did. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached for me, but I stepped back. I need time, I said, my voice firm. To figure out if I can even trust you again. Right now, I don't even know who you are anymore. Matt, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I couldn't stay in that room any longer. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, the weight of everything crushing down on me. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't bring myself to talk to Lila, and Alex didn't bother trying to reach out. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was hurt. These were the two people I trusted most in the world, and they'd shattered everything we'd built together. It wasn't until a week later, when I received an email from Alex, that I started to understand the depth of his pain. The email was long, rambling, and filled with years of resentment he'd never voiced. He talked about how he'd always felt invisible next to me, how every time he tried to stand out, he was overshadowed. He said he didn't regret falling for Lila because, for the first time, he felt seen. But he also admitted that he knew it was wrong, that he'd destroyed the only real friendship he'd ever had. I closed the email, my emotions a tangled mess. I didn't know if I could ever forgive him, but I also couldn't deny the truth in his words. Maybe I had been blind to his struggles, too caught up in my own life to notice the cracks in his. Lila and I eventually sat down to talk, but things were never the same. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. We tried counseling, but every session felt like we were putting band-aids on a gaping wound. In the end, we decided to separate. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. As for Alex, I haven't seen him since that day. Sometimes I wonder if he's found the happiness he was searching for, or if he's still chasing shadows. Life goes on, they say. But some scars never fully heal. Months passed, and the chaos that Alex and Lila had left in their wake began to settle. Life didn't go back to normal, it couldn't. Instead, I found myself navigating a new reality, one where trust came harder, and the memories of their betrayal were never far from the surface. Lila moved out shortly after we agreed to separate. She stayed with her sister for a while before finding her own place. Our conversations were polite, but distant, revolving around the logistics of splitting our lives apart. There were no heartfelt apologies or tearful goodbyes, just an overwhelming sense of finality. One evening, while packing up some of Lila's belongings, I found an old photo of the three of us, me, Lila, and Alex. It was taken during a summer barbecue at Alex's place, long before things went so horribly wrong. In the picture, we were all smiling, arms around each other like nothing could ever come between us. I stared at that photo for a long time, wondering how we'd ended up here. Maybe the signs had been there all along, buried beneath years of laughter and shared memories. Or maybe life had a way of unraveling even the strongest bonds when you weren't paying attention. About a year after everything fell apart, I heard through mutual friends that Alex had moved out of town. Apparently, he'd taken a new job in a different state, looking for a fresh start. I didn't reach out to him, and he didn't contact me. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss him sometimes. Losing a best friend is its own kind of heartbreak, one that doesn't fade as quickly as you'd like. But every time I thought about picking up the phone, I remembered the look on his face when he justified what he'd done. The resentment, the bitterness, it was too much to forgive. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, started going to the gym more regularly, and even picked up some old hobbies I'd neglected over the years. Slowly, I began to feel like myself again, though there were still moments when the loneliness hit harder than I expected. One evening, while sitting at a local cafe, a woman approached me. She was warm and confident, with a smile that lit up the room. We struck up a conversation, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I found myself laughing, genuinely enjoying someone's company. Her name was Sarah, and she had a way of seeing through the walls I'd built around myself. Over time, we grew close, and though I was hesitant at first, I began to open up to her about everything: the betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle to move on. Sarah listened without judgment, her presence a reminder that life could still be good, even after everything I'd been through. Looking back, I don't know if I'll ever fully understand why Alex did what he did, or how Lila allowed herself to be pulled into his bitterness. But I've learned that sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. And while that pain never completely goes away, it doesn't have to define you. Life moves forward, whether you're ready or not. And with each step, the weight of the past grows a little lighter, until one day, you realize you're not carrying it at all.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to click that button. I put a lot of effort into searching through Reddit, so you can enjoy the stories I found just for you. You already know what to do. Comment what you think about this story. I'll respond to you. See you in the next video.